Welcome to Aging Out or Growing Together, Flipping the Youth Service Paradigm to Better Support Young Adulthood. My name is Oriana Ides, and I'm a field coach or technical assistant specialist with MHTTC, and I'm so honored that you have joined this conversation and space today. Our specific theme of today is the 5th session in a series of 6, is navigating the barriers to service and client participant resistance and reluctance, case management, framing, aging out or growing together. We are in session 4 of 5. We have had some really incredible panelists come and share their on the front line work and lived experience in creating safety and healing and opportunities for growth for transitional age young folks. We all know that quite often that age group is under-supported, misunderstood, and that it is such a critical time for young people. And so today's session really centers navigating barriers to service and resistance, client reluctance and resistance. How might we show up in a way for young people that aren't yet aware of or aren't yet ready to fully create transformation or change within their lives. And so we have one session following this, and that will be our closing panel where we'll discuss policies and practices. So we thank you. Maybe drop in the chat if you've been to one of these before. It was lovely to see folks' names as you were coming into the room, returning names. So maybe share in the chat if you've been to any of the sessions previously, and we really do hope that you come to our next one as well. We have a guiding question for this series. It's our essential question, right, that we are grappling with. How might our organizational values, our program design, our implementation strategies, and our long-term vision for young adults expand most effectively, and I'd say responsively, right, to build collaborative networks of support? How are we thinking about this question individually in our work, in the moment-to-moment interactions with young people? How are we thinking about it collectively as organizations and within our teams? And then how are we creating change in policy and relational practices and structures to respond to or to answer this question? As a program, we have been uplifting quite incredible wisdom. And like I said, this is our 4th session in a series of 5. And something that we like to create after each session is 5 gems. And that is a publication where we kind of distill powerful ways of thinking and relating to this work. It's the place where we also highlight themes that different faculty have shared or our participants. And so we want to offer them today as a way of kind of weaving our past sessions into this session here. We had the incredible Dr. Patrick Kamanyang with us. We had Dana Luso and Ricardo Garcia Costa, who all are engaged in direct service as well as structural change within their communities. And they offered these 5 gems. Theme of our session was uplifting cultural practices that are sustaining and support young adult transformation. And so I'm going to read over these gems to you out loud, and I invite you to listen and also read to yourself, and in the chat and even out loud to think about maybe 3 to 5 consecutive words that resonate with you. So as I'm reading, what words kind of settle in a deeper way, or what words resonate with you as I'm sharing them? And you can share them in the chat after I've read, or there'll be opportunity to unmute as well. So the first gem was that culturally responsive practices and affirmations serve as a powerful therapeutic intervention, an antidote to systemic oppression, racism, and microaggressions. That the most transformative relationships are those that operate from a place of radical love and unconditional positive regard. Our organizational responsibility is to intervene upon and boldly counter the impacts of racial division among youth and young adults. The most transformative support and services draw upon our clients' personal insight, as well as principles of health science, culturally responsive teaching. There are important correlations that exist between cultural affirmation, wholeness, and our sense of belonging. And so as I read those, as you maybe reread them to yourself, what words resonate with you? There's a string of maybe 3 to 5 that we can uplift, that we can call into chorus here as we're framing today and preparing for this conversation around some of the most difficult parts of this work, right? Which is reluctance and resistance. It feels so good to meet a young person who wants the support that we have to offer, that is willing to walk in line with us. And how do we hold the very difficult work of seeing the power and potential and beauty and need of a young person that isn't quite yet able to create the transformation and change or receive our support and assistance? And so responsibility, intervention, transformation, affirmation. I'd like to just kind of share for us some common definition around reluctance and resistance, and invite you to offer the way you understand it in your work in the chat as well. And so reluctance is an unwillingness or a hesitancy to participate fully in the helping process, often as a result to reluctance to change. Okay, and so that's how we're defining this word. Resistance is a little nuanced and different, but it's an attempt to restrict or control any type of information that is shared or received, and disagreement regarding possibly the approach or delivery to therapeutic intervention or the process or case management. So it is not necessarily a response to not wanting to change, more so a response to the modality and something within the either therapist or case manager, where there is not a seeing eye to eye, or there is something within the dynamic that isn't settling well with the young person, the client. And so that is how we're defining these two words, reluctance and resistance. And to kind of deepen our understanding of reluctance and resistance, I bring these words to us by Corey Newman. Resistance is not simply an impediment to treatment, but also potentially rich source of information about each client. They are presenting something that can be worked with. Right? So not just to see the resistance as someone's unwillingness to create change, but how do we look at it as any other part of themselves or any other coping mechanism that is activated in response to something external or internal. So this information can be assessed and utilized to strengthen the therapeutic relationship. So how do we see it as an asset? Help the therapist better understand the ideographic obstacles to change and devise interventions that may motivate the client towards therapeutic activity and growth. So that really is the crux of our conversation today. How might we see these presentations as strengths and response, right? Rightful, a justified response to what a young person is holding and the ways they have survived as they've navigated the world. And so we want to add on a layer to this with something that many of you are probably familiar with, and that's the wheel of power. With this additional layer, thinking about reluctance and resistance, everyone that is part of creating this offering today, the panelists, and I think it's really important to think about and explore our identity, our power and privilege as case managers, as therapists, as those engaging in healing work with young people, as well as their power and privilege and how that might influence or impact someone's willingness to build alliance with someone else, to trust and engage in process. And so racial trauma is something that is incredibly pervasive and something that, they say it's not the shark or the fish, it's the water that we are existing within. Many of our young folks that are historically targeted, that are marginalized as a result of the identities they carry and walk in this world with. And so we want to kind of offer this as a framing to think about reluctance and resistance, and how might, building on the idea of the reluctance and resilience actually being an asset or something to work with. What we typically view as resistance within BIPOC clients is actually a form of resiliency, of powerful resistance that has supported their survival at different points and times in their life, right? And so please share in the chat, like, what does this surface for you? What does this make you wonder or think of as you think about these ideas together, right? As you think about reluctance and resistance and why that might be surfacing, as you think about power and privilege and the context of a young person's life. And so I really wanted to uplift the wisdom and just brilliance of James Baldwin, of Braveheart here, just to add a little layer or common definition around historical trauma. It's the cumulative emotional and physiological pain over an individual's lifespan and across generations, right? So it is not necessarily even something a young person can identify as experiencing in their lifetime, maybe, but it's beyond their lifetime that they're carrying into this very moment as a result of massive group trauma. So it can have a variety of impacts on folks and young people, especially unsettled trauma and grief, depression, and high mortality, preventable death, very preventable death. And so we're going to watch a very quick minute and a half clip of James Baldwin.
For Baldwin, the truth is that the ghettos of his youth remain, gnawing at the spirit of those who live there.
The poverty is piled high, making it even more inescapable, and making it even more inescapable how thoroughly you're despised. The high-rise slum becomes a high-crime area almost at once, because what are you going to do with all these children, really? Whole families condemned forever to nothing in the richest city in the world. My best friend, a black boy, jumped off the George Washington Bridge when he was 24 and I was 22. And I was sure that I was going to be next.
Just from despair, or?
From despair, from rage, because you can get to a place, where you're in battle so often that that's all you can do. You've been beaten so hard. All you can do is your world narrows to a kind of red circle of rage. And you begin to hate everybody, which means you hate yourself. And when that happens, it's over for you.
Baldwin has taken that.
How difficult it is to actually see possibility from an unregulated nervous system, and the ways in which our nervous system must, respond to protect us, given these conditions and the circumstances young folks must wade through constantly. And, I read recently that substance use is an attempt to regulate the nervous system, right? And how do we see that as an effort, right? An effort that can cause, incredible further pain, but an effort nonetheless to find calmness and to find a way towards ease. We have an incredible panel today. They've already started to share their wisdom and perspective. And so I am going to give each panelist a moment to share a bit about who they are and their journey towards this work, and then we'll engage in some questions. We'll go in the order of Magali, and then Dr. Abdul Abdil, and then Falila Bilal. But first, before that, I'd like to share that Magali currently serves as a bilingual intensive reentry case manager for transitional age youth in San Francisco, California, both in and out of custody. She works to create alternative sentences and collaborates with judges, public defenders, and the district attorney's office to do what is best for the clients. Magali comes to the table committed to assisting communities in developing healthier, positive life choices, and is highly motivated to advocate and empower individuals to lead fulfilling lives despite challenging circumstances. Dr. Jalil Abdul Adil is a full-time associate professor of clinical psychology and psychiatry at the University of Illinois, Chicago. He's the co-director also of the Urban Youth Trauma Center at UIC, which is part of the National Traumatic Stress Network. Dr. Abdul Adil trains community-based providers on using evidence-based practices for community-based and family-focused programs that addresses trauma and disruptive behavior disorders. And then Falila Bilal has worked joyously for over 30 years, creating innovative, relevant, evidence-based strategies to transform, empower, and develop individual systems and organizations in contemporary thought. Falila's work is centered in healing practices, empowering youth and families, and self-discovery. Ms. Bilal specializes in the fields of youth development, healing-informed organizational development, and strategic fundraising.
I got 40 years experience from the East Coast to the West Coast. So, and I'm bilingual, raised in the South Bronx. So when I'm watching those slides about James Baldwin, it kind of like, I lived the tenement, the projects, that whole scene. Now I work with young women, 18 to 25, that they just haven't found their magic. You know, they're in and out of custody. Some of them have children. Some of the children are being removed. Some of them, you know, it's just a whole list. And I'm sure the people in this room, all 50, 60 of us, can we all know where it's at. You know, it's really hard to just not give up on people. And I'm just in it for the long haul. And I'm here to support the young people that are up for the challenge to take that baton from us OGs, that they call us, you know, and hand it off to them. And I'm with my girl over here. We have to have some different playlists for different rooms, because, you know, if they can kind of like see, wait a minute, you know, I can trust, even as young as 10, 12 years old, they can look at you and feel, I could trust you. You know what I'm saying? So I'm in the people game, people.
Appreciate sharing this space with you all, and I appreciate the build up toward this because it's a tough conversation. And I've been working in Chicago for the last 30 years with those marginalized so-called minority communities. And when Robert Taylor Homes was the biggest housing projects in the country, and all the places you hear about, Cabrini Green, Inglewood, all of the neighborhoods in Chicago, they said were the throwaways or goaways with young people who've been in foster care, juvenile detention, and other areas. And I was real clear, real quick, that this profession has to serve the communities, not the communities serve the profession. And so I was fortunate to be able to challenge some of the mainstream ways of doing things. And one of the tools I picked up along the way was being able to talk in music, media, and sports. Even my crew who used to throw chairs, like they put them down, you start talking about sports, or you talk about rap music, or you talk about things which were important to them. So being able to leverage these aspects of entertainment to do edutainment has been what I've spent the rest of my career trying to be able to do. And a few names come to my mind as we prepare for things like this. The people who've gone through foster care, well, way back in the day, and some of you on the call can appreciate, Brenda's been having babies for a long time, right? And the people who survived and then were able to make it out of foster care include people like Exhibit, The Game, DMX. Um, I've also used movies, and I encourage us, let's grab onto these movies. I still remember how powerful Antoine Fisher was, not just for me, but to be able to show, to discuss with a young people who otherwise would not be willing to say, hey, that happened to me, but they'll say, hey, look what happened to him. And then relate that to their own feelings and experiences, and then circle finally to them and talk about the vulnerabilities, the traumas, and things that they've suffered. Just now, they're releasing this new movie, 1001, which is also about foster care. It's almost like that cycle continues, and that's about a mother who, and I won't ruin it for I have a rule when I use media. I don't ever ruin movies, but it's a mother who lost her child to foster care and went back and desperately and dramatically reclaimed him. I'll put that plug there. I'm gonna stop there. So there are some scenes from Precious to others that we can use to have our young people be able to discuss things, also allowing them to write their own stories, be that spoken word, raps, make your own selfies, put up your own videos that you might keep private, but we could discuss in our treatment approaches. There are a lot of techniques now that we could use to access our young people in different, I'll say, cutting edge and more importantly, culturally sensitive ways to reach them when these mainstream methods are ineffective and often insensitive to the realities that they've lived. And I'm going to, in the spirit of the hip hop, pass the mic.
1 2 1 2. I'll pick it up. Doctor,
Okay.
thank you for sending it my way. I'm so grateful to be here. I had to lift up my camera so y'all could see what's behind me. This is a picture of Hodge behind me. And so I wanted to show that because I'm at my parents' house in Maryland. I live and love in Oakland, California, but I'm here right now due to family emergency. And I think that what I am experiencing right now in my visceral lived experience in and out of the hospital with my stepfather is the same thing that we talk about young people that are aging out of these systems. It's their lived experience. It's that walk, that nervousness, that emotionality, that anger, that tentativeness, and then also that knowingness, right? There's another side to their lived experience that is this sense of strength and resiliency and power of like, I am aging out of this really traumatic thing. I'm one of the few that has survived, right? And so when the doctor and my sister talk about this idea of who we are, knowledge of self, that being a critical component that we walk with, I want to just remind all of us that not only are we survivors of this very traumatic thing, we're also the medicine of the world. And so I think it's really important when we talk as people of color that we lift up this notion, this scientific fact, this reality that we are the medicine of the world. And that's a very important knowingness to have. And it's a very important thing for us as service providers to understand when we're working with children of color, that they've already survived some things, and who they are in their essence is what causes this world to thrive and to be well. So yeah, I don't know if I answered your question. I'm Falila Aisha Bilal. I'm a therapist. I'm a drama therapist by trade. My family's from the East Coast. I was raised within an organization, a Muslim organization here in DC called the Black Men's Development Center. My father, my mother, these were some serious cats, serious brothers and sisters. And they decided to create a world where all the children that came out of that knew who they were. right? And so from that, for me, this work, I am the work. I'm one of those little Black kids that, was from these neighborhoods. It's not a disconnect. And so when I think about what I want for me, that's what informs what I want for these young people aging out of the system. And I'm constantly checking myself. Now that I'm a mom, I have a son who's 20 and a daughter who's 15. I'm constantly checking myself. Because in some people's opinions, I've made it. I do, I'm successful, whatever that means. And it's because I know who I am. It's not anything other than that. And in knowing who I am, I understand what is my role and what is not my role. So I offer that to you, for those of you that are listening and that are connecting to this, to get to know yourself a lot better. Because as you do that, you will be able to help young people, regardless if you're not the same race as them or the same gender as them or from where they're from. I understand resistance as a way for young people, and sometimes they do this better than we do, to establish boundaries, right? Like, I do recognize that when a young person is resistant, it's wise that they are resistant. We as adults represent a power dynamic that for a lot of our young people has been extremely traumatizing, has not been safe, has actually caused harm to them, right? So that initial resistance, that like, well, who is you? Well, hold on. I think that is a powerful skill set that they have. And what's interesting about resistance is we understand, like, if we were with each other, not in the virtual world, and I had a rope and we were pulling either side of the ropes, if someone stops pulling, the resistance is gone. So I think that we kind of play ourselves as adults when we do the push and pull with clients' resistance. The way that I've worked with it, I do a lot of work in the past and maybe in the future too, with young people who have experienced gender-based violence. I ran an agency in Oakland called Missy that works around ending the commercial sexual exploitation of children. And so with the young women, primarily it was young women that we were serving. With the young women there, they had foster care folks, they had criminal justice folks, they had probation officers, parole officers. Sometimes they were engaged with all of these systems. And when they would come to Missy, we would just let them be. So there wasn't even a need for resistance, because we wouldn't play that game with them, if that makes sense, right? Like, we would just drop the rope. And if they wanted, they get to tell us how they want to move in the space, right? So they get to establish boundaries. They get to say, when we have a session, I want that door open, right? They get to say, you call me this name when you refer to me. They get to say, I want to see my case notes, what you're writing about me. And they get to establish some boundaries. And so there was a few things that happen when we do that. One, we're teaching them valuable life skills, right? If we are offended by the fact that they want to establish a boundary, then maybe we're, again, as my sister said, maybe we're not in this work for the right reasons. Because them establishing a boundary with you is good practice for them to be adults, right? 3, they understand the significance of their presence at this organization, which means there's funding. It means there's a whole slew of adults that are there to actually support them. And honestly, I will also say, second to resistance, I have not experienced a lot of resistance from young people in terms of my work. Now, with my children, yes, mama son, mama daughter, but with my work, I let them tell me no. And when I do that, the resistance dissipates, it's gone. And then they end up coming to me and say, Miss Aisha, Mama Aisha, why you wear dreadlocks? Or Mama Aisha, when you was over there and I seen you drinking that lemon water, why you chew the lemon pills? What's up with that? They start coming to me and asking me questions. It's there. So the notion of resistance is, I think it's a construct that we experience when we haven't done our own individual work, and when some of us are just committed to fighting for some reason with these young people that we're supposed to serve.
I meet my clients in custody. I meet my clients at Children Protective Services. I don't, so I get the resistance, because a lot of the resistance that we deal with, even in our own lives, has to do with fear. What do we want? We're scared of change. we're scared of what this person is going to do with our information, because we know information, I tell many of my clients, do not write your social security number on anything, because they have no concept of how valuable that number is. And you don't always have to tell your story if you don't feel safe. Information. So I think once, and that's how you say, because you come off as, because again, I'm in the same world. I've been there. I've been sitting in a chair and hearing somebody go blah, blah, blah. And I know you're studying me. Even today, it triggers me when I'm doing things like this, because I'm doing it for information and to help others. I'm not doing it for you to study me. I'm not a project. I know I done did this a long time, and I got a lot of tactics. And oftentimes I get people to say, even, my knowledge is not for sale. So it has a lot to do with fear, and we should fear. Time and time again, we're said, we're told one thing, and then it comes down to something different. It's just like right now, everybody knows they're giving away a whole bunch of money, right? Here comes the equity program for this. Let's give this person $1,000 a month, no strings attached. This is what's going on in California, but we're not giving them the education. So yet again, we're giving them a loaded gun, just like when we threw drugs in Oakland and all the other little conspiracies and whatever else. We're doing it again. What you just heard James Baldwin said, I could apply it to Oakland right now, San Francisco. You know what I'm saying? It has a lot to do with fear. And once you make that person, that client, that colleague, that support system, once you kind of learn how to breathe, and you can kind of like not get caught up with that, because you're going to be triggered. If you're in this business, you're going to be triggered, and it's good. You got to remember, you got to go back. I always tell people, go get you some baby powder, go get something, start get your senses back, honey, because you're losing your senses. Like we said, I'm losing my head, but that's your head. So go get it back, get some, a little something. But it has a lot to do with fear. And I think if we're able to understand that, and all these little things like meet them where they're at, and all these little kind things that we do, I think we won't have as much resistance as we will have the barriers of the laws that are put in place, because that's where it really starts at. Like now they're wanting to raise the age limit of the foster care, of when the foster care youth ages out. So when is the information going to get back to the client? So I think that's a real important thing, fear and information. Those are two big things, because if they know more, again, you know better, you do better.
Wonderful comments you've already had is that it's good we have this discussion amongst all of us, because we need different tools in the boxes for those different places we may operate. Because I know I've served these type of foster care and other youth inside juvenile detention centers and therapeutic schools and community agencies, in gifted programs, in inpatient units. So I'm listening and learning about the different techniques and tools that may be applicable to the particular situation that I'm working in. I may not have as many restrictions in some places, so I'm gonna take advantage of that. And if I do have restrictions in other places, I'm gonna navigate that. So it's good that we're hearing this. The thing that I would add, when someone says or someone acts like they're resisting, we love that word resistance. All that translates to me as a provider is, you're not doing what I want you to do right now. And that's never about them, it's about us. And it's about the dynamic that I have personally and professionally committed myself to overcoming. You don't have to go out and get degrees to learn how to fight and argue with young people, right? And as a matter of fact, you gonna never out teenager a teenager. So I'm gonna have to figure out how to do that intellectual judo, and I'm gonna let your energy come, but in a way we can direct it towards some mutually beneficial goals. And when young people don't trust us, I understand that means show me.
Yes.
That's what it is. They say, show me what you got. Show me what you say you want to help me. Show me. You say you're worthy of trust. Show me. You say you're not going to sell me out. Show me. You say you're not going to be like the other therapists who I started opening up to, then they got off rotation, or they went and told DCA or the Department of Child and Family Services, the Child Protection, and broke my family up. You ain't going to be like that? Show me. So I take it as an opportunity to work with them and meet them where they are. I would not want them to automatically and unconditionally trust an adult walking in the room. I don't care what degree they got behind their name, because not all institutions function in the best interest of these communities. And we got to be transparent about that, right? Yeah, keep it real. And so for me, I don't have no problem with the so-called resistance. I don't have a problem with reaction. They're testing. It's like, show me you're different. And I do think, and I just want to say this, I'm sorry, I have to keep it real here, y'all. When we talk about taking a client's personal history, we should also start asking systematically, not just what's your personal lived history, but what's your personal service therapeutic history. Because they have gone into some of these allegedly healing environments and have been harmed and hurt. And so we got to show them we're not that last person or the last 10 therapists you had, but let me show you. And when you say show me, all good, let's go, right? So I think we have to own the institutional history that preceded us meeting these clients. And that includes the institutional absence, which is part of history when they were getting hurt or they were hungry and they were not being treated properly, and there was no institutions there. Now here we come.
You know, we could spend the whole call just on this point. I just want to add something, because the brother just made me think about this notion of trust, right? Like, we ask for our clients to trust us, but why should they? Is really the question that we should be asking ourselves, right? One of the things that I've learned about trust is that we are accountable for our intention and our impact. I've seen a lot of mental health clinicians say, well, I tended really well. I really wanted Bobby to do well, and he was just so upset. And like, you're accountable for your intention and your impact. You don't get to walk away from the impact of your actions just because you intended well. That's not how it goes. You have to be accountable. And so, and I say that because the other side of this relationship, these young people, they're accountable. They have time put on their case. They get things taken from them, right? They might get held in custody longer, right? They have all of these impacts even when they intend well as well. And so I just want to put that out there, that this is a relationship we're talking about participating in. And even when I've been blessed, I'm 50 and I've been blessed to work at places that have integrity. But when I did work for places that lacked integrity, for instance, I was a therapist in the Alameda County Sheriff's Department. I worked for a program for nonviolent drug offenders who were incarcerated. I was a therapist there. So I would go into Santa Rita prison. I would go in clear around what my role was and what my role wasn't. And so I was building trust with the folks I was serving, because I was honest about what I could do within this program and what I couldn't do. Right. And in moments when I caused harm, which I have, like I'm sure we all have, I've been able to say, I'm sorry. And what can I do to repair that harm? And so I don't think that we get a pass just because we intended well. That's not enough. My mama intended well. Right. And so did my grandmother. And they were complicated human beings just like me. And so I do think that we have to really deconstruct and ask ourselves, why would someone trust you? What makes you trustworthy? And that's an okay conversation to have.
It's a really important, it's a vital one, not just important, vital, right? And I love how all three of your responses to the question centered self-work and how you yourself stay centered, how you perceive a behavior or a response. And I think that it is so important that we always start with our own healing, our own understanding, and deeper self-awareness, right? Because every single one of you spoke to the ways in which our energy is being picked up upon by the young people that we're serving. And when we talked about the definition of resistance, it's a response to a dynamic that's playing out, right? And so how do we create autonomy and spaces for young folks to feel powerful and as though they are have a sense of control? In so many ways they don't, right? And so how can you in your work and your relationship provide them that opportunity to feel a sense of control over themselves? And so the next question that I want to ask, as you're starting to get to it, was around tools, actual practices, and things that you can do to build alliance and trust.
I deal with transitional age youth women. They want to get out because they don't know the ending, and they're like, oh, and they want to, and I'm like, no, you bought your ticket, you have to stay, because I know and I understand. I understand about the triggers and all that, but oftentimes we lose at the end of the film, and in this one we're going to win. You know what I'm saying? So if you kind of, with me, with the women, I'm constantly pointing out how magical they are. I mean, I have 17-year-olds with 2-3 children, and I don't let them get caught up in the stigma of I had a baby too soon. You know what I'm saying? It's a reason for everything. Now, the mistakes you're causing to keep you in certain rooms, that's something different. But something, oftentimes we think of something, what are we crazy? And not really understand that something did happen to you. You have to uncover what that is. And once you uncover what that is, you'll be able to see your magic and use your wand. Okay? It's just like I said this the other day, and my sister here said it earlier. A boss is not someone with a big house or a big bank account or a Benz. A boss is someone that knows where their feet stand, where they're walking, and whatever room they're in. They know they're secure about where their feet are. That's a boss to me. So I'm often trying to tell my girls that are navigating 4 systems, CPS and the probation and all of that. I'm often telling them, it's not like you ain't got 4 laundry bags that you carrying with this baby. So you need to see your magic. And when you asked me when we met, what is one word that stands out for you, your clients? Resilience. They don't realize how they're my heroes, because I really don't sometimes think that I would have been able to get through some of the things they do. So again, we're going back to meeting where they're at, using all the tools. It could be music, it could be theater, it could be things, experiences, activities, groups. My women, 18 to 25, what do they know about postpartum? They know they don't want to be bothered with the baby. They're sad, but they don't know why. So why not start a mommy group and do it on a Friday night? Because on a Friday, all the groups and all the services are going to go into a blackout, because the only thing that's available to you on Saturday and Sunday is jail. And you give them a power tool, like a pellet, like something, an energizer that'll guide them through that weekend. But again, we have to really sit down and do the work for ourselves. I got life coaches and therapists, not afraid to say it. I tell everybody that's in this business, you better get it out somewhere. And again, those are the tools: taking care of yourself and making sure that client is taking care of him or herself.
I think circle work is really important, and it's been at the base of the work that I've done, is sitting in circle with folks. And that can be a sacred circle. It can be a laughter circle. I'll just say that just quickly, because I think we understand what that is. It can be a circle where we are connected because we all have children. It can be a circle where we just sit in silence and we breathe together. This notion of circle work, it can be a place where we critically analyze certain philosophies. Circle work is really important. And for a lot of folks, particularly young folks, young adults of color, it is It's part of our cultural sacred practices. And so you don't even have to say that. You can just tap in and folks will tap in. That's it. I'm gonna be quiet. Go ahead, doctor. Sorry. Not sorry. Sorry, not sorry.
Sorry, not sorry. Yeah, I'll just chime in a quick summary, and you could go to our website and get a lot more information about it. We at the Urban Youth Trauma Center have 5 best practices, and then I attach music and media examples to them. First best practice in working with any youth, especially those who've gone through these marginalized and historically oppressed experiences, you got to connect them to some type of support. Sometimes that's professional, sometimes that's in the neighborhood, sometimes that might even be the OG who lived through that, is willing to give back now and has that street credibility and lived experience to convince them to take advantage of the professional services available, but they need to be connected to somebody. There's professional supporting survivors of trauma. Secondly, connect them to people who are positive adult and peer mentors. Again, they need to be connected to somebody. And I'm thinking there was a story out here by one of the rappers by, I think it's NF Choppa, who said that his daughter saved his life, meaning that he was going to plan on committing suicide. And only because he has a daughter and felt that connection did he stop. So we all need some type of spiritual, emotional, psychological connection because you're going to go through our ups and downs and we need those buffers, right? Third, find your skill. And when I'm doing with the hip hop, I say skills with a Z, skills. Everybody got a gift. We need yours in this world. Develop it, and that can help turn your life around and inspire you from doing other things. Fourth, um, find a sense of safety. Doesn't you could be in the most bullet-ridden neighborhood. There has to be a sense of safety, or why try? Or I'm gonna do the same thing. And last but not least, change your cultural and contextual norms. Meaning, don't tell me you value me as a young person and you don't put your money where your mouth is and you don't walk the walk that you're talking. So being able to challenge that, including forums like this, to try to uphold and uplift social justice and carrying that out of our offices into the street or into the funding center or into the institutions, that's very important. That's a quick summary of our top 5 activities we work on.
I'm not a tech super savvy person. I take walks with clients all the time. I'm virtually, I'm on FaceTime, they're on FaceTime. I send music. I send like different pictures, funny things. Like I just try to use the technology the way they use it. And again, I would also ask them, how do you want to use this technology? How do you want to connect virtually? And let them really guide that connection and that process. And I find that it actually is easier on me as a clinician. I'm like, yay, I get to stay in my bummy clothes, or I get to like, still be there for my kids. So asking them, but then also just being creative.
Well, that's the key word, is creative. It's like this summer, I just created an event called the Outdoor Series because our office is going into remodeling and I didn't want to be all over here, there. Community Works West is an organization that's been connected with the restorative justice process for about 25 years. And they're creating a space with, I didn't even know they had architects that did restorative justice spaces. So yeah, so I created the Outdoor Series. So we're going to look for parks, we're going to look for ice cream spots, we're going to look for little cafes, we're going to look for places where the women could walk their children. It's that creative. We can't lose that process. You know what I'm saying? That's what gets us through it.
Learning and growth, and how do you support their understanding? So that was a question posed in the chat. When you're working with folks who have influence and power over young people, but don't quite have this orientation to the work. Questions for you to think about in your own work. Thank everyone for their wisdom, their words, for the ways that you offered your energetic reciprocity and contributed to our learning and growth. There's so many young people for generations that will be touched by this conversation today and the wisdom that was uplifted. I want to leave us with this poem here. You are a miracle walking. I greet you with wonder. In a world which works to own your joy and imagination, you have chosen to be free. Every day as a practice. I can never know the struggles you went through to get here, but I know that you have swum upstream, and at times it can be lonely. I want you to know I honor the choices you made in solitude, and I honor the work you have done to belong. I honor your commitment to that which is larger than yourself and your journey to the particular container of life that is you. You are enough. Your work is enough. You are needed. Your work is sacred. You are here, and I am grateful. These words I extend to you in your work, but I also implore you to extend them to the young folks that you're working with as well. And how do you greet them with this energy and this knowing?